Indigo is one of those colors that shows up, causes confusion, and then disappears before anyone can properly describe it. You've probably seen it 1,000 times without realizing it. On rainbows, on old paintings, maybe even on clothes you thought were blue, but apparently aren't. It's the color that launches arguments and ruins childhood mnemonics. But what actually is this mysterious in-between shade? I'm Professor Everything, and today we'll be answering the question, what is indigo? Right here on Explaining Everything. Indigo is, in the simplest terms, the color sitting between blue and violet on the visible spectrum. Imagine blue and purple having a baby. That's indigo. Now, scientifically speaking, Sir Isaac Newton, yes, the apple guy, was the one who smashed white light through a prism in the 1600s and declared that the rainbow has 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. He didn't have to include indigo. No one was forcing him. But 7 was a nicer number than 6, so he squeezed it in like an extra guest at a wedding table. Thanks to him, school children for centuries have been suffering through Roy G. Biv and wondering, why does indigo feel like DLC content? Indigo's wavelength range, roughly 445 to 464 nanometers, depending on which color scientist you ask, because color scientists also argue about this shade. Even experts can't fully agree on where blue ends and purple begins. So, if you've ever been confused by indigo, don't worry. Humanity as a whole doesn't have it figured out either. Indigo isn't just a color. Historically, it was a whole problem. The indigo dye, made from plants like Indigofera tinctoria, was so valuable that for centuries people literally called it blue gold. Europeans in the 16th and 17th centuries lost their minds over this stuff. Indigo turned fabric a deep, rich blue that practically screamed, "I'm fancier than you." Kings wanted it. Traders wanted it. Everyone else also wanted it, but couldn't afford it. It became such a big deal that rival industries tried banning it. France literally outlawed indigo dye at one point because it was putting local woad farmers out of business. Imagine banning a color. That's how dramatic people were. And the process of making the dye? It smelled so awful that entire towns complained about it. The fermentation process basically created a swamp monster scent. If you ever complain about your job, be glad you weren't an indigo dye worker in the 1700s. By the 19th century, German chemist Adolf von Baeyer, who eventually won a Nobel Prize, created synthetic indigo, which finally ended the plant fermentation stinkfest. This synthetic form is what most denim jeans use today. If you ask 3 people to describe indigo, you'll get 5 answers. It's that confusing. So let's pin it down clearly. Visually, indigo is a deep blue with a hint of violet, not bright blue, not lavender. Think night sky about an hour after sunset, when it's too dark to be blue, but too early to call it purple. That's sweet spot. On digital screens, a commonly accepted version of indigo is around hex number 4, B0082, which helps absolutely no one unless you're designing a logo. But that's the shade most people mean when they say indigo. And just to make things more chaotic, some modern scientists argue that what Newton called indigo is really just dark blue, and that true spectral indigo is barely distinguishable by most human eyes anyway. Translation: our eyes aren't even good enough to enjoy indigo properly. The color exists, but our eyeballs treat it like blurry DLC we didn't download. Let's talk about the elephant in the sky. Should indigo even be in the rainbow? Some modern educators and scientists believe it shouldn't. They say Newton exaggerated the number of colors for aesthetic reasons. In reality, the human eye generally perceives the rainbow as having 6 major bands, not 7. Meaning, indigo might just be a historical extra. Some physics textbooks don't include indigo anymore. Some art schools skip it entirely. And many teachers quietly pretend it doesn't exist because trying to explain it to kids is basically a trap. But rainbow traditionalists insist that indigo is sacred and must remain. They're like, don't erase Newton's legacy. He died for, well, okay, he didn't die for indigo, but still. So today, whether indigo counts depends on who you ask. But whether or not it deserves a permanent chair in the rainbow lineup, indigo undeniably sits between blue and violet in the spectrum. So it's not fake. So what is indigo? It's a deep, blue-ish, violet-ish color with a messy history and an identity crisis so intense it has confused scientists, artists, teachers, and innocent schoolchildren for centuries. It caused global trade battles, inspired chemical breakthroughs, and still sparks arguments today about whether it even belongs in the rainbow. So next time someone asks, what exactly is indigo? You can confidently say it's the color between blue and violet. If you learned something new, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. If you enjoyed this video, please check out our other bingeable channels. Thank you for tuning in, and join us next time here in the channel that answers all the why, what, who, where, and how questions you've always wondered about, here on Explaining Everything.